So today we have Miss Linda Wolfe Hill. Everybody give her a hand as she comes up. Who's going to be sharing her testimonies. Now, Linda had 2,000 images to share with you today, but we narrowed it down to 12. It was. Linda's lived an abundant life, and she could talk for days on everything that she has, everything that God has done for her. But we only have about 5 hours, so we narrowed it down to 12 pictures and 30 minutes or 40 minutes, just to give a peek into what's going on. We'll find out. So I'm going to pray over Linda as she gives us her testimony today. God, thank you so much for Linda. Thank you so much for walking with her and being with her, supporting her in her battles, putting the people around her who lift her up, who strengthen her, putting those in her life that you have sent her to help, Lord. And thank you so much for her family and everything that you've blessed her with. We just are so grateful and so honored here at 24/7 to have her amongst us as one of our friends, as one of our family, someone we love. And we just thank you for all that you are continuing to do in her life. In your beautiful and your glorious name. Together we all said, amen. All right, Linda, take it.
Excuse me.
I have to tell you guys, I'm really nervous. Well, I haven't been up front and preached for a long time. And yes, I have preached before. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but I preached many sermons, and I have a really thick book full of my sermons. But once I left All Nations, I came here, and I thought, I don't have to preach anymore. Little did I know. But anyway, my husband, Tom, would be here today. His dad is 94. He just turned 94. He still lives on the 5 acres that he has with his horse. But he seems to be being confused all of a sudden. It was kind of a all of a sudden thing. So we're kind of concerned about that. So he's at his dad's today, checking things out. But I have to say he's probably one of my best supporters. And it was through God that he had brought him into my life, even though we weren't expecting it. But Tom's been a really good support for me. So with that, our lives are a journey. We just never know where God will take us, and we never know what we will experience from that journey. My grandson, Cameron, and on April 4th, 2017, he was only 19 years old, and he went on his own little personal journey that took him 2,660 miles from Mexico border to Canada. That's him there on the right, and that's his cousin Brandon on the left. That's the beginning of the 2,000 miles across country. Brandon lives in California, and Cameron lives in Snohomish here in Washington. So my son flew Cameron down to California, and then from there he met Brandon, and Brandon took him on down to Mexico. And when Brandon dropped Cameron off, he goes, "Okay, cuz I dropped you off, now you can walk home." So he left and left him there. It took Cameron 5.5 months to do this hike. He did it alone. He experienced a lot of pain, physical, emotional, a lot of emotional challenges. He said that the hardest part was emotional. And I did talk to him about the Lord a little bit. I said, well, maybe this will be your good adventure to find God. And I said, now remember, you know that I pray for you, and I want you to be praying too. It was a little nerve-wracking having him gone. He had a lot of obstacles he had to learn to deal with. One of them was the snow in the mountains, a lot of detours, the fires. But he kept the faith, and he kept walking, met a lot of new people, saw some of God's beautiful creation. And we followed him all the way. I did every day. I kept track of where he was, even surprised him and went down to visit him, which he was surprised, and it was good. It was a wonderful journey, and who knows, maybe later on in his life he'll really see the journey that he went on and what God has done for him. But this takes me to my own story and my own journey and how God has worked with all of us. And in this, in the middle of my journey, in the middle of my life, I remember going to God and asking him for help. And this is where our scripture comes in today, Matthew 7:8. And it says, "Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives. He who seeks finds. And to him who knocks, the door will be opened." And let me tell you, does that happen? Totally. So I have to say, my story has brought up a lot of my own emotions again, going back and going through my life again. I want to start out to let you know a little bit about me. I'm a Washingtonian. I was born in Seattle. I was raised in Everett, and then my last 2 years of high school, my dad was transferred down to Puyallup High, so I spent only 2 years at Puyallup High. It was a tough time. But my mom and dad, there's my mom and dad. They're both gone now. My mom died 15 years ago at 79 with cancer, and my dad died 8 years ago. 8 years ago now. In my family, with my mom and dad, I have 3 other siblings. I'm the second born of 4. I'm the middle child, that syndrome, you know. My sister, Teresa, is the oldest. Then it's me, and then my brother Doug on the right on the end there, and then Paul's a baby. Since my parents have died, the 4 of us kids have continued to meet every other month just to stay together as we grew up, as we had our own families. Things kind of dispersed, and we didn't see them as much because everybody was busy. So then when Mom was really sick with her cancer, we spent more time together taking care of her. And after she died, we just kind of kept that going with Dad. And Dad had just asked me, he says, "I hope that when I go, you kids will continue to do this." And I said, "We will, Dad." I said, "I promise I will make sure that it does," and it has. And it's been fun, and it's been good for us. I have to say, I strive to be the perfect child. I have to say also that my childhood wasn't bad. It wasn't exceptional. There's always challenges and heartache in the family. I never gave my parents any trouble. At least I didn't think I did. I didn't talk back, maybe not too much. And I did what I was told most of the time. My sister talked back. She was more rebellious. My brothers, as I found out later on, as they got older, they would sneak out at night. Probably my sister did too, but I never thought of doing that. So I stayed home. I wasn't smart in school. I struggled. School was very, very difficult for me, and I didn't like it. I wanted to please my parents more than anything else, and I was always, and I have been, a people pleaser, or want to be. I felt like I had to work or earn to be loved. I didn't, in our family, there wasn't a lot of positive reactions from my parents telling us, you know, you're doing a good job, we're proud of you. It was just basically everyday stuff. We had to be home every night by 5 o'clock for dinner. That was just the rule. You just had to do that. So we weren't really involved in a lot of activities at school. A a lot of the times my dad worked 2 jobs, so therefore when we wanted to do things, they always said they didn't have the money to pay for it. I did play basketball, and I did swim. It was kind of my outlet for me, so I didn't have to go home. I was a tomboy. I liked being outside. I'd rather be outside than be inside and play dolls with my sister, but I did. I did play dolls with my dolls, but I preferred to be outside, and I climbed the trees with the boys, and I did all that stuff, and I still love the outdoors, and I can still be a tomboy. So I would say my parents were strict, my dad especially. He was more controlling. We didn't really get to do a whole lot of things as far as activities with friends from school. Not really any outside stuff with, just hanging out with your friends. I did more when I was involved with the COIO, which is the Catholic Youth Organization. And so with that, Dad let us do whatever we wanted to do with COIO, and we were very active in that. So this tells you that I was raised in a Catholic home. My dad was raised in a very strict Catholic upbringing as well, so that came from his parents to him to us. And he was very adamant about us going to church, us going to catechism, being in CYO. He took us to church. My mom did not go, she was not Catholic. We went to Mass every Sunday, every holy day, and every other day that there was supposed to be a good reason to go to Mass, because if you didn't, you were not going to make it to heaven. And that's what I grew up with, knowing that I wasn't ever good enough to go to heaven. That basically, I was going to go to hell. I mean, that's what they called it, going to hell. And so that was my thoughts. That's how I grew up. Going to catechism, we had to memorize prayers. It was all prayers. There was a prayer for this, there was a prayer for that, there was the rosary, and that's basically what I knew in the Catholic religion was memorizing prayers. This is what I had to do, this is what I had to learn. I had the classes for confirmation, and all that stuff, but I never really learned that Jesus loved me. Actually, I grew up not even knowing that he ever existed until he was born. I really thought that Jesus never existed until actually when he was born as a baby. And that surprised me when I found out otherwise. It was really exciting to find out that he did always survive, or I had lived, and that it wasn't just when he was born. We never opened the Bible. Again, I believe that I had to earn my love from God, from Jesus. I really didn't know a whole lot about him. He died on the cross. Our Mass was in Latin. And of course, I didn't know Latin. We never knew Latin. And to watch Mass to me was a ritual. It still is a ritual. It's kind of eerie to me now. The priest had his back to you so that you couldn't even see what he was actually doing at the altar. So it was not heartwarming. There was not a really connection there. And I didn't like going. Of course, there was the rules. When you walk in the sanctuary, you always had to dip your hand into the holy water and make the sign of the cross. And we had confessions where we had to go into the confessional as well and confess our sins to the priest, because he was the only one that could forgive you. And your penance was always either 3 Our Fathers, 3 Hail Marys, or say the Rosary. And that's basically what it was. It was just a routine. And it had a hard time not really penetrating into me as a relationship with God. Eventually, though, Mass was changed, or not changed, but the priest turned around so that you could actually see what he was doing. That was interesting, because then I could see what was going on. And eventually, too, it turned to English instead of the Latin. But it was still, to me, just a ritual. It was just a routine. There was nothing personal about it. There was just nothing heartwarming to it. My dad would always scare me with religion. He would use religion, I think, as a tool to tell me how to do this and how to do that. If I didn't follow the rules, if I didn't pray, it scared me. I always, like I said, I believed I was not going to make it to heaven because I was never good enough. I'd never heard anything positive, again, that Jesus loved me and that he's always there for me. I remember being afraid of dying. Dad had scared me. He said, well, if you don't say your prayers, you may not make it to heaven if you died. And I thought, then my little mind's trying to think what dying was like or what death was like. So in my small mind, I'm thinking, I would never exist. I would know nothing. I would never even be here. And that was scary to me as a child. So I remember going to bed crying and being terrified. Again, I couldn't please. I was never going to go to heaven. I couldn't be good enough. If I couldn't be good enough or please my parents, how could I even please a God? Or did he even love me? I look back, though, sometimes and I see how ridiculous it really is. But as a child, you're groomed into these things and not knowing anything different when that's what they're teaching you. I never opened the Bible. We weren't allowed to open the Bible. So you do what they told you to do, and it's a lot of traditions. It's a lot of do's and don'ts. So, and growing up, I thought, this just isn't for me. I just never felt it was right for me. But I still went, still tried to please. And I wanted to feel loved. I wanted to feel loved by my parents. I wanted to please them. I wanted them to compliment me. I wanted them to just give me affirmations. And I never did that. I was always being compared to my sister. So as I graduated, I decided I wanted to go to college. My sister did not go to college. So again, I'm trying to please Dad because this is what he wants, college. But he said to me, his words were, you'll never make it to college because you don't have a job. Everything that we did, everything that we had as kids had to pay for ourselves. I did a lot of babysitting. So my last year, I did go out and pound the streets, and I did look for a job, but I did not find any. So just to prove my dad wrong, I saved all my college money. I saved all my babysitting money. And I also picked berries. And I saved over $300, almost $400, and that's what it cost to go to school. That was a lot of money back then. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go to college, and I signed up. I registered. I went in my first quarter, and I thought, never ever thought what's going to happen now? I have my first quarter paid for, but I don't have any money left. I don't have anything. Never even thought of that. I just thought, this is what I'm going to do. Well, Dad was in the reserves because he was military, and he was in the reserves, got called back up to active duty. Therefore, I could get a grant, which I did receive. So I did go to college for a year. This is where I met Tom. Neither one of us did finish college. We ended up getting married very young. We were we were snot-nosed kids. Oh, I forgot to mention me. That's me on the top. I had turned a year old, and I had just come home from the hospital. I had polio when I was 11 months old. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. Mom was at a picnic when I got very, very sick, and she knew something was wrong. When she called the doctor, they said take her to the hospital. They were waiting for her and me at the front door, grabbed me out of her arms and whisked me away. I had to learn to walk again. Obviously, it was the non-paralysis kind, which I'm very grateful for and thankful for. I couldn't find really any little pictures, but I was, like I said, 12, a year old on the top. Down there on the second one, I don't know how old I am. Grade school, I think. So those are the only two pictures of me I have when I was younger. So anyway, Tom and I, that's us at the top. We look like little kids. I was 19 and he was 20. When we got married, yes, I was pregnant. I was almost 3 months pregnant, which is why we got married. We had to, the hardest part was telling parents. Actually, my parents did well, his parents did not. Dad continued to tell me, again, he no positiveness from them at all. When we got married or when I quit college, he told me, he said, he just basically told me how disappointed he was in me, that I had all these opportunities if I had stayed in school and gotten my degree, and I blew it. Basically, I blew it, and that was all he had said. He did not come to my wedding. He did not go to my sister's wedding, so Tom and I were married at the Justice of the Peace, and the reason why he didn't go to my sister's wedding was because she was marrying a man that had already been married. So when I decided to get married, I asked him, I said, well, the boys, if you haven't gone to Teresa's wedding and you're not going to my wedding, what are you going to do with the boys? I wanted to know. He says, well, of course I can't go to their wedding then. But he did, because they were married in the Catholic Church. So, those are little things that just kind of stick in your mind, and I just felt like I was a disappointment to them. So I always wanted to prove that I could do it, I could make it on my own, and that's what I did. So our marriage was not easy, being young, being pregnant, let alone we were not ready for marriage, let alone even having a kid on the way. But here we still are today, and those are our 3 kids. You can't see the picture very well. When they were younger, we have 2 boys and a girl, Stephen, Brian, and Tricia. And as we were, again, being young, Tom and I were really, we were poor, we had no money. So I have to say we fished out of the rivers to eat. Tom stole some food out of his parents' freezer a couple times so we could eat. I'm sure they knew we were in that freezer, but we never told them. Ate a lot of soup, ate a lot of sandwiches. It was tough, not just with the necessities of life, but just between ourselves as well. But God had his hand in keeping us together in all of these times of our struggle. And I truly give it all to God. So I quit going to church after we were married because Tom didn't like me going. And I still, even though the Catholicism wasn't my thing, there was just something about just being drawn to God still. I loved him, but I really didn't know him, and I really wanted him to love me. So we argued. Tom and I argued about me going to church, so I quit going, and it was just to keep the peace. So then we have our kids, we have the boys and the girl, and I have to say my biggest regret is not planting any kind of seeds in my children with God. That's my most biggest regret that I have. I do have the grandchildren that I figure God gave me a second chance with the grandkids, and now with my great-grandkids. And believe me, I am following through on that, planting the seed. I yearned during this time of being married and being young and raising the kids, I yearned to know Jesus. I actually even bought the children's Bibles because I didn't know anything about it. I bought the children's Bible and started reading them just so I would know what the Bible was really about and what was in it and a little bit more about God. During this time, during this time, I was beginning to struggle within myself. We had already been married for, this is probably my late 20s. I knew that something was wrong. We had a really rough times. I struggled within myself, and I began to look at myself, and I said, what's wrong with me? It wasn't physical. There was a lot of emotional stuff going on within my brain. I was very depressed. I went to my doctor, and he suggested counseling and therapy for me. So I agreed to go. I spent 13 years in therapy, sometimes more intense than other times. But while I was there, I realized that the problem that I was having with myself and my struggle was that I had been molested when I was young, and it was with family. Although I hadn't remembered it, my body had, and so did my emotions. I went to my counseling, and I realized too at that time that was the biggest part of the problem with our marriage, is that I was dealing with all these emotions within myself that I did not know how to deal with. At the time, Trisha was only 3 years old. And also during this time, I started working, and I met a friend whose name was Carol. She has a big role in my coming to Jesus. And we hit it off right away. I only worked part-time. It kind of got me out of the house as well. She was my support during my darkest days. And let me tell you, I had some really, really dark days. She was a Christian. And she always spoke to me about God. She knew the Bible, and I was drawn to her knowledge of it. So I asked many, many questions about God. She'd always be eager to fill me in. I always had questions for her. I was the one to bring it up. I was always the one to bring up about asking questions about Jesus and God. And she was always eager to answer. We did a lot of talking on it. What I didn't know after being friends with her is that she was a Seventh-day Adventist. I had no clue what a Seventh-day Adventist was, and I didn't ask. I just knew she knew God, and that's what I wanted to know. So she went on to, I call it my schooling. She schooled me through Adventism because of the questions that I asked. And she told me about Sabbath, how they kept Saturday, and that she said that it's difficult. It would be difficult for me to keep it because I was always living in the world and everything. We did everything anytime that we wanted to. I had no problems believing that the Sabbath was Saturday and that the Catholics had changed it because she had showed me an article where they had claimed that they actually had changed it, and I wasn't surprised. I just wasn't surprised. So I had no problems accepting it. I was still pulled by God through her. I can see now where He used her in this journey as well. She encouraged me and influenced me to pray. Not only was she schooling me and bringing me to God, I was also bringing her back to God. Not that she had really ever left Him, but it kept her more focused and brought her back into a stronger relationship. So God was using us both, not even being aware of it. I look back now and see everything, how God did all of this together and pulled it all together. We just never know what the journey will be. We don't know about wilderness or how long we'll be in the wilderness, but I think he took me like this. And then bring me back, and then maybe I have to go through that again. But I got where I am because of him and because of Carol. And so there was another tool as we're friends that God used to help heal me through my emotional darkness that I was going through, and that was through soccer and dance. By now I'm in my 30s. I was a animal on the soccer field. It was a kind of an outlet for me. It's like I was kind of became a different person because I was always so shy and quiet. On the field, I just became wild, I guess you might say. I did a lot of running. I was a speed on the team, and I enjoyed all that running. And I think it was just getting out all those frustrations, all those tension, the stress. It was my way of just releasing it. Then the other thing came my dance. A friend of mine had asked me, "Oh, you want to take a ballet class with me?" I said, "Sure." It's always been a passion. I've always loved dance. I always wanted to be a ballerina, and so I started dancing at the community college. The gal the teacher, the instructor there, she had her own studio. After taking these beginning classes where I was not learning anything from them because it came so easy for me. My parents did teach us kids to dance when we were young. We did ballroom and stuff like that, so I learned it. And it came really easy for me. So after a couple of years, my dance instructor who has the studio, she came up to me and she said, I want you to come to my studio and I want you to start dancing with my advanced kids. And I went, I'm not good enough. I can't. I am just not good enough to be there. She said, yes, you are. She goes, I want to use you in the Nutcracker. So I said, okay. So I went, and she put me in the advanced class. I thought I did pretty good. I had to ask, for help, but I did. And I loved it. I really did love it. But I had to go back and learn technique. I had to go back and learn how to use my body differently, how to really hold myself. It's the technique, and technique is hard. It's very, very difficult. It's dancing is very disciplined too. So when I went to the studio, I have to tell you, in a week, I took 10 classes in 4 days. Probably in 4 days, I had 10 classes. I would take the advanced class on Monday, ballet on Monday and Wednesday, go back to, and then have the advanced jazz classes after that, and then I went back in the very beginning on those days and take a very beginning ballet class to learn my technique. And then on Tuesdays we did point work. And I actually did go on point. There's my shoes. That is not easy. That is very difficult. What I know now, I wouldn't have done it at the age I was. It was hard. And I have to say, I danced with kids. And these kids have been dancing since they were young. The only other person that was older than me was my partner that I ended up being partnering with. He was a year older than me. So we were the old folks of the school. And it was kind of fun because Jo, our instructor, she always choreographed for us as we got older. So she made it a little easier for us at times. And we both got hurt at one time too. So we were both dancing while we were hurt, but we did it. So as I'm going through my classes, I learn a lot about myself. I learn about, it was really getting in tune with my body again. It was really getting in tune with my emotions, with my confidence. I had no confidence in myself. I was very insecure because of what had happened. It was easy for me to restrict myself and carry all my attention. So the dance was exceptional for me, and I did love it. My expression comes through music. A lot of times when I listen to music, I just close my eyes and I feel myself moving with the music, and that is a release, it's an expression for me. So it was very, very helpful. Not only that, but performing on stage was a good way for me to come out of my shell. So I learned a lot through that. Dance was very healing for me. At the same time, I am still with Carol. We're talking about God. I also taught classes. I actually taught classes too. I taught the ballet, and I taught jazz from ages 3 years old up to adults. I enjoyed that as well. And it was a good way for me just to get out of the house. It helped me to believe in myself. And as I'm doing this, I realized through Carol that God's beginning to love me, but I didn't have the impact of it yet. I started to know that God was about love, but I hadn't made that connection within myself yet. But Carol kept encouraging me and praying with me. And I said, well, I just really didn't know how to pray. She says, just talk. So I did that. And it was good. I had to learn. Of course, as we talked about Seventh-day Adventist, she talked about do's and don'ts, which is what I had, grew up with. But she said it's not about do's and don'ts, and it's not about tradition, it's about Jesus. And that's exactly what it is. It's about him. And it's the conviction within your heart in the relationship with God. And that's what I learned. So I came to the place, I asked Carol, I says, I'm really ready to read the Bible. Where do I start? And she goes, just pray about it. God will let you know. So I started praying and praying and praying and praying and praying. And finally one day on my way to class, just as I pulled into the parking lot, I see these big, big, black, bold letters that says J-O-B. Really, that's where he started me. And I went, job? I thought, job? Job? I'm supposed to read Job? And it's like, Job's actually the hardest book in the Bible to start with. So it's like, okay. So I told Carol, and she says, just go for it. But she says, don't try to understand it, just read it. So I remember we went camping then, and I was reading Job, and I thought, I don't know what I'm reading, but there's something here for me. As I look back now, I see that it has to do with we struggle in life. Keep our faith. God is always with us, and no matter what, we'll still be blessed by it. And actually, with me, his class now, we're studying the book of Job. We just started today, and some good info had come out through amongst all of us, which gave me more food for thought, and as was to why God really started me there. So I did, and Carol continued to school me. I also, again, asked her about the Sabbath. I wanted to know more. I was beginning to really thirst for God. I wanted to be filled up. I kept grasping for it more and more, and the thirst became more each day as I was just praying and reading and stuff. So one night I decided I need more. I need more, so I prayed. And I prayed, and I prayed, and I prayed. Lord, I said, Lord, I want something more, and I don't know what it is. I don't know how I'm going to get it, and I don't know where to get it. I wanted to go to church. I did not know where to go. Again, I never even thought about going to an Adventist church. So I kept praying, and then one night, I was gone. 3 people had come to my door. Julia, Marvin, and Lois Fitch. They had actually come to my door to drop off Bible studies. But I have to tell you that and I found this out later, Julia said they were going out, passing out the requests that that they get, giving Bible studies and dropping off and talking to people. I was the very last name on that list. Where they got my name, I have no idea. So Julia walked up, and before they went to my house, Julia said, "Oh, Lord, we just want to go home. We're tired. It's late. We want to go home." She said, the Lord said, "No, you need to go to this house." She goes, "But we're so tired. We really want to go home." He goes, "No, you really need to go to this house," which was my house. And it was getting dark. So she knocked on the door. Nobody answered. And she goes, "Oh, nobody's here. I'll get ready to leave." And God said, "Nope." He said, "Stay there. Take your time." She goes, "But there's nobody here." He says, "You need to stay. Go slow." So she wrote it out. So she wrote really slow this note that she was there. And then poor Julia, Tom came up behind her and scared her to death. It goes, "Oh, can I help you?" And she just about jumped out of her skin. She goes, "Oh, I'm here to drop off these Bible studies for you." And he goes, "Can't be for me. It must be for my wife." So they left. I came home. He says, "Oh, some people dropped off some Bible studies." And I went, "What?" So I'm going, I've been praying. And now these people show up at my house. I have Bible study. I called them right away. They were really shocked that I had already called them. And I said, "I'm interested. When can we get together?" And we did the very next week. They came to my house. They brought their studies with them. Oh, before that, though, I have to say also that I called Carol after they dropped these off, and I said, "Carol, did you send these people to my house?" Because I knew they were Adventists because the sign of the times on this card. And at one time I asked Julie, I said, "How did you get my name?" She goes, "Well, actually, the name on the card wasn't your name, it was your husband's name." And I said, "Well, where did you find this card?" She goes, "It was in the airport." We hadn't been in the airport. Now, this is all God, believe me, because I didn't write on any card for Bible studies. Tom definitely did not. And at the airport at that, so I'm going, this is divine work right here. So, I mean, I was just, Carol and I both went, wow. I mean, it was just one of those really wow moments. And I'm going, God's hearing me. God just answered my prayer. So I started studying. I kind of filled them all in on Adventism because I had already known it from Carol, and they were very surprised. Went through my studies very, very quickly. I knew then I wanted to go to church, but again the Sabbath, because I was dancing on Saturdays, because we performed on Saturdays, I felt like I couldn't go. Again, I felt like I couldn't go. I couldn't do it yet because I still had a commitment that I had to keep in dancing. And after that, I had told my instructor, I said, "I'm not going to come back and dance anymore." And she goes, "Oh, you can't quit." I just said, all I said was that I'm too busy on Saturdays. I really need those days off. So she said, "Well, I'll choreograph around you so you don't have to come in on Saturdays." And I said, and finish out the season. And I said, "Okay." So after the Nutcracker, after December, I went to church for the very first time in January. And I walked in that church and I felt at home. I was like, I knew it instantly. I knew I was at home. I had told Marvin and Lois that I was coming. They were greeters that day. I stood in the foyer with them and greeted as they greeted people in the church. So I was meeting all these people as I was standing there with them. And let me tell you, again, Satan starts working when, you make a commitment to God. He did everything he could to keep them from coming to my house to do studies because we had snow, we had, bless Lois and Marvin, they were like my second parents. And they came even in the snow to my house. They even came when we had lost the power. They came to my house. They were there faithfully for me. And I just adopted them as my spiritual parents. So right away, I knew I wanted to be baptized. I knew instantly this is what I wanted. And so I didn't want to scare them too quickly. I didn't want to say, I'm ready, but I did. And I met Jack Cologne then at that time and told him what I wanted. And I convinced him that I was really ready, and I knew that I was. So we set a date. My biggest issue was telling my parents. How was I going to tell my dad? Being a strict Catholic as he was, I'm going, now what do? I was very nervous. I wasn't sure that I was even going to tell him. I didn't want to. I decided to because I remember my grandma, my mom's mom, saying that when my mom did eventually become Catholic, that when she became Catholic, she didn't tell Grandma, and Grandma says she was really hurt by it. So that was in my mind, so I decided to call and tell them this is what I was going to do. This is my big step. And I finally got the nerve, and I called, and I said, oh, Mom, please answer the phone. She did. Phew, thank goodness, because I didn't want to talk to Dad. I did not want to tell him. So I told her what I was doing, and she was good with it. And I said, I would like you guys to come. Now, I didn't know if they would, but I said, I would like to invite you. And they did. They did come. I was baptized in February of 1992, and I think it's been 27 years now. They came. My oldest son came. He was married at the time, and brought their baby, and my other kids were there. Being baptized was the most beautiful experience I think I have gone through. I was so ready for this. When I was baptized, as I came out of the water, I have to say, for the very, very first time, I felt clean. I felt clean for the first time in my life. And I also felt the forgiveness for my dad at that time, too. Because I had also been praying that I wanted to be able to forgive him, but I wasn't there yet, and I just didn't know how. But when I was baptized, I could feel that forgiveness. And it was a beautiful feeling for me. So at that time, too, after all those years of counseling, I didn't have to go back because I didn't need to anymore. I was confident in myself. I found a God that loved me. I had a God that was very forgiving. And it was a big relief for me at that moment, too. What joy and peace I had when I was baptized. But the struggles didn't stop there. I always struggled with the challenges of my kids. They were always challenging me. That was always a big thing. And again, with my brother, a big thing that was very exciting for me was when I had Mila here and she was dedicated. That was a big step. That was a big step because my family, I've been the only Adventist. I've been the only one going to church. None of my family has ever been involved in it. But I had Carly let me get Mila baptized or dedicated. And again, I thought I would be the only one on my journey, be alone like I've always been alone. But she came. Mila's daddy came, Tino. Tino's mom came and his sisters. And then I also had 2 other granddaughters that had come. So that was really special for me. But my journey is ongoing. It will always be ongoing. There's the good and the bad, and I call it the ugly. And through my journey, I have learned to be secure in myself. Not always, but it's there. I've learned to enjoy nature even more because I see the beauty of God through nature. And I was always found God when I was out in the wilderness. So you know that when you struggle, if you seek him, you'll find him. When you knock, he'll open the door. And that's exactly what I was doing in my life at that time. And the best part of it all is that he loves me just as I am, that I am loved, that I don't have to do anything to please him except just love him. So at the time I talked to a friend, and he asked me, he said, now, your journey now, is it the same as it was before, or is it different? I said, my journey today now is different. My journey before was more about God and me, getting my relationship with him, knowing him. My journey now, I can't really put it in words. I really don't know. I don't know what he wants. I don't know where I'm supposed to go from here. I know he will show me. I don't know if it'll be one of these again, all over the place. But I know that he'll bring it all together when the timing is right, and in his timing. So I still thirst for God. It's a different kind of thirst now. It is still God and I, but there's more. I think it's supposed to be more with other people now, whether it's to bring them to God or what. People that I have lost contact with. One was Carol, where I contacted her again. People that have left my life have returned for who knows why, and maybe that's the other people that I'm supposed to be connected with again, bringing them closer to God, helping them. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know what the words are. I don't know how to express it. I know I want more. I don't know what it is. The best thing that happened, and again, is God working, is that I needed something new. When I was at All Nations, I was there for a long, long time. And the time was right for me to quit. The time was right for me to move on. And the doors were opened up at the right time. But again, it's all God. I know it's all God. And he brought me here. Well, he brought Ron to All Nations first. So I knew about 24/7. And after that, I just needed to go someplace where no one knew me. I just needed to have that spiritual refreshing again, because I'd lost it at All Nations, wearing so many hats. I felt like I went to work instead of to church. And I didn't feel like going anymore. I had to really push to make myself come here. But I knew I had to, because it's easy just to turn away. It's a vulnerable place to be when you move, because you're so unfamiliar. It's not my regular box. I am an introvert, extrovert. Once you really know me, I can be crazy. Those who know me know that. But God is good, and he leads all of us on a journey. We don't know when that journey will end and the new one will begin, but know that he's always there. We may not know it's a journey at the time, and we may not know the outcome of it and how good or what it was really all about until it's over with. God has really worked in my life. If it hadn't been for him, who knows where I would have been by now. And my last picture I want to put up of Tom and I know I didn't go through a lot of my pictures. Just a minute. For all the troubles that we went through, the heartache that we went through. A lot of times, we never should have made it. But God kept that string really tight. He's been an inspiration in my life. And I'm grateful that we've been together this long. This year we're celebrating our 50th wedding anniversary. And again, that's a whole nother journey. So I owe a lot to him and his support for me and his love for me. And I talked too long.
Thank you, Linda. Bow your heads with me. Give her a hand. Father, again, we want to thank you for Linda. We want to thank you for never giving up on her, for continuing the journey with her, Lord, with everything that, again, you have blessed her with, and everything you've walked alongside her with, even the things she didn't realize, and that you love her, and that we as a family here will continually remind her that she is loved by God, she is loved by all of us, and there's nothing that she has to do to earn it. It is freely given, Lord. And may she share that with others and everyone she talks with, that your love there's no price on it. It is a gift to all of us. And you're beautiful in your glorious name. And together we say, amen. Thank you. Give her a hand again for being up here.